So my name's Megan, and I'm here today to talk about an incident I experienced when I was rafting on the Poudre River. We came upon some tubers that were at the top of what is called the Mad Dog Rapid. Tubers that we came upon who were waiting to go down Mad Dog, they were at the top of the rapid. So we went through the rapid, we made it through fine, and we got about 50 yards down, and then they came through in their tubes. One of the guys flipped over on his tube because the rapids in that Mad Dog can get pretty big at those water levels and can easily flip a tube. He attempted to first stand up in the river, which is a huge safety concern. You should never stand up in the river because, especially in Colorado rivers, they're very rocky. You can get what is called a foot entrapment. You can also get banged up a lot, and then you also just waste a lot of energy. At this point, when you do flip, you should try to just get to shore as quickly as possible. And at this point, he'd been in the water for probably only 3 or 4 minutes, but in 50-degree water, your body gets cold very fast. So he was starting to get cold and tired. We were seeing that he was not able to self-rescue, and there was nobody around him that was going to be able to help him. So we made the decision, obviously, that we would help. I knew that we probably wouldn't be able to pull him into the boat if we threw a bag to him while our boat was in the river, especially because he had no life jacket. So we didn't have that extra buoyancy that you can use to get people out of the water and onto a boat. So we pulled our boat to the side of the river, got safely to shore. My husband grabbed the throw bag. We saw him coming. He was in the middle of the river, and we yelled really loudly that we were going to be throwing him a rope. We tossed the bag to him, and somehow with the last bit of energy that he had, he was able to grab on to the rope. At this point, he was going underwater, and it looked like he was having trouble breathing and possibly starting to drown. People don't realize how powerful the water is at those flows. So if the river's running high, just don't go. Go hire a guide. There's some incredible rafting companies in town. Overall, I just want to emphasize to people that if you're ever on the river, please wear a life jacket, and don't underestimate the power of the river. And there's a lot of resources out there too if you do need information about river safety. Poudre Fire Authority, the City of Fort Collins, and the Poudre Heritage Alliance have a lot of information with a program called Play It Safe on the Poudre. All of their websites have maps, river flows, safety guidance. There's just so much out there for you to access if you do want to learn more about how to be safe on the river.
So we'd like to talk a little bit about what you should do as a bystander if you see somebody in the river who needs help. First of all, if you're alone or if you're with a group, it doesn't matter. We don't want anybody to get in the water to risk their lives, because we don't want one victim in the water to become 2, 3, or even 4. So we want to keep you safe, stay on the bank, and that's just one thing that's very important no matter what. We don't want you to get in the water. So one of the first things that we'd like you to do, if you're able and willing to do so, is if you happen to have rope or something on the shore with you and you see someone coming down the river that may need help, you can throw them the rope and you can pendulum them into the water. And that is one of the very first things that we, even as rescuers, would do if we have a throw bag with us. If that's not something that you do have, you can be resourceful at that point. One thing is that we use in swiftwater a term, it's the LSP, it's the last seen point. And that is something that is very important for us as swiftwater techs. We want to see that point where that person was last seen, because that helps narrow our search area. So if we know that the victim went in right here and that's the last place that they went over and that's the last place that they were seen, that's where we're going to go ahead and start our search, rather than, maybe however many yards up the river and potentially wasting time. So if you do see someone and if you're alone, what we want you to do, and if you're not able to throw them a rope or safely get them out with a stick or something, what we want you to do is go along the shore and stay with them until the last scene point. That's extremely important, like I said, for us. And then we want you to be able to call for help. Call for help in any way you can, whether it be yelling, using your cell phone. And if that's something that you're not able to do, when you see that victim go under the water, leave something there, even if it's like a glove or a whistle, a flip-flop, whatever it is that you might have, so that can indicate to you where that last scene point was. And then you can leave the scene and run up, go somewhere with their cell phone service, find someone who you can flag down on the side of the road and tell them to call for help. And then we want you to go back and stay at that last scene point, because that's going to be our starting point as swiftwater rescuers. And also now in the age of technology, something that's extremely helpful and can be helpful for us too is if you have your cell phone, you can always get a video or a description of that person in the water, because that also is helpful for us as rescuers. If you tell us, hey, it was a brown-haired girl wearing a blue shirt, that's something that that will help catch our eye and that we can search for and just know kind of a starting point of what to look for.
We're going to go over appropriate watercrafts for use on the river and what to do if you find an abandoned watercraft on the side of the river or in the middle of the river. So it flows like this, which you can see is really low. We're right around 200 to 250 cubic feet per second going past us here right now. A single chambered tube is totally appropriate. Great time to come tube the river as long as you're in an appropriate location. At those higher water levels, you're going to want what we consider a multi-chamber tube that is rated for the whitewater environment. And that is because your normal lake float, pool float isn't strong enough to withstand the hit of contacting a rock. And it's especially important if you have a single chamber flotation device, because if you puncture that one chamber, you have nothing left to hold on to keep you on top of the water, which is where you're going to want to be in the river. Best advice is at those high flows is go with professional rafting companies, only tube when we're about these levels. When you do go out on your tubes or any appropriate watercraft that you have, it's really advisable to put your name and phone number on it. And that is because if you get separated from your craft, it gives you the opportunity that you might actually get it back, which is always a plus. And if somebody finds that tube and contacts emergency services, we can call that number, we can reach out and contact you to find out if you are in fact missing in the river or if you are fine on dry ground and just don't have your watercraft anymore. The best thing to do is to stop if you're going to call it in and make sure the person isn't sitting right next to it, because if we send out a swiftwater rescue response, we send a lot of resources to it. So we don't want to send out a whole bunch of our resources to a call that's not actually a call. If you do see one, if it's in the water, never go into the water to try to retrieve it. If it's on shore and it has a phone number and a name on it, go ahead and make note of that number and name and go try to call that person. Do leave the watercraft where you found it, because if the person is in fact missing, we are going to use where that watercraft was to help us know where to search for them. So a fun fact about the water is you hear people talk about river flows in cubic feet per second. So right now, here going past us, we are right around 200 to 250 cubic feet per second of water flowing past. But what does that mean? 1 cubic foot of water weighs 62.4 pounds. So right now, flowing past us in weight is about 2.4 Cadillac Escalades. So if you think about it that way, if you get pinned up against something and that water is pushing you against it, you have about 2 Cadillac Escalades pushing up against you. At higher water flows, when the water's around 1500 CFS, which doesn't look that scary, that's about 17 Cadillac Escalades worth of weight pushing down the canyon. If that wraps a boat or a human or any solid object around another object, such as a tree, a bridge piling, a rock, those 17 Cadillac Escalades are what are pushing that person or object up there, and you're not going to be able to push yourself back out of that. So even slow, calm water flows, remember the weight and the strength of the water behind it.